All right. Did all that stuff. Let's talk about actual aircraft oil and the selections thereof. So types. Types of aircraft oil. Types of aircraft oil. All right. Don't let this confuse you. It's simple, but you got to get it right. Let me see. It's back up. Is that what I want to talk about? No, I don't want this one. All right, because this was, I don't have that picture there. Now, straight mineral oil. So that's already confusing because with the exception of our synthetic based, so you have partially synthetic, then everything else is a mineral oil. So it's all, but all of it's a mineral oil base, which is to say it's not synthetic. Okay, so you got to understand that. It's oil, but it's made from mineral. But then we have something called straight mineral oil. All right, so it's this stuff, right? No, it's not that stuff. Is it this stuff? I haven't used it. Nope, it is that stuff. Okay, so straight mineral oil. Types of oil. So we're going to start with that. Straight mineral oil. Which is to say, it is a bottle of just oil. We call it just oil. So, oil. Just oil. What kind of additives do they use in that? They don't, because it's just oil. Okay? Straight mineral oil. Example is like Aeroshell. Aeroshell is probably the most popular brand oil by far. I don't make any money off them, so it's just they're just the most popular. Aeroshell 80 and 100. Just examples, right? They probably make more, but around here, that's all you're going to find. All of this stuff is made from high viscosity index based stocks. High viscosity index means that
Or is very slow.
it maintains the same viscosity over a wide range of temperatures. So I'm not going to write that. It's made from high viscosity index stocks. Contains almost no additives. So almost. Contains almost no additives. Just a pour point. Depressant for improved fluidity for improved at cold temps. All right, so it's just this just oil with a little bit of stuff in there to help it pour at a colder temperature. Otherwise, it's just oil. As opposed to what we're going to talk about in a little bit, which is the W80 and the W100. Okay, so we're getting to that. So straight mineral oil, that stuff has additives. We're getting to the stuff with additives, but right now we're just talking about the straight mineral oil. It is be used for break-in. But not on turbo engines. All right, so a little bit of this is kind of my opinion, I guess. Speculation, my speculation. I don't know what's doing there. So I want to say the old way of doing things. old way of because I just feel like there's way different ways of doing things now. But the old way of doing things was you get a new engine, you get an overhauled engine, you run just oil in it, straight mineral oil for break-in. And so you'd use this break-in oil for 25 to 50 hours. And then you'd switch to something better. So the idea being this oil helps you break in the engine. What is breaking in the engine?
Taking off the high points in the cylinders.
And how do we do that? By running it and letting those parts rub against each other. So this is just my thought. Tell me if I'm wrong. But the reason why we want to use just mineral oil and not this other stuff is because this other stuff, if it didn't allow it to break in, that tells me the other stuff does what?
Protects it better.
Protects it better. So which is the better oil?
Stuff without it.
The other stuff. So to me, that's like saying, oh, no. You need to run the crappy oil at first. You run the real crap oil so it breaks in. You don't want that. And then you're supposed to change it later. That's what I'm seeing right there, right? Except you're not supposed to use this oil. I want to say the Lycoming 76 series. I could be wrong. It's been so long since I looked it up. Because they had the tappet problems. Don't use it on that. Also, if it's got a turbocharger, don't use it on that. I want to say there's a few other engines, Lycoming very specific. Don't use it on that. Just break it in on this other stuff. So you're telling me the other stuff works for breaking in? Well, yeah. So then we can take it one step further. And I told you that I worked a lot with ECI. I bought a lot of their products and worked with them, their machining and stuff when I was building engines. And they wanted all of their cylinders to be broken in on Phillips. They recommended Phillips for break-in and continual operation. So
Phillips is a name brand of just...
Name brand. Instead of Aeroshell, it's Phillips.
Right.
Phillips XC2050, multi-viscosity. So they're producing a product that they have to warranty, and they're saying, we want you to use the better oil, please, to break it in, and just keep doing it. So I took their advice, and when I built my engines, I would always just start them with the Phillips XC2050. I would break it in on the test stand with that stuff, drain it, do all the stuff, and give the customer a brand new case of Phillips XC2050. There you go. I broke it in on this stuff, and it's also, by the way, good to run your engine all the way through. Now, I guess the pessimist in the group would say, well, if it's bad enough to let you break it in, it's probably not a very good oil. So anyway, you be the judge of that one. So used for break-in, let me see, but not on turbocharged engines for sure. And the whole reason why what we get here is mineral oil. Mineral oil does not suspend particles and allows sludge to build up. Mineral oil does not suspend particles. And allows sludge to build. Which is to say that the other oils then would have contaminants, and if you can imagine it, it finds the contaminants, circles the contaminant, and keeps it within the oil. Which, on the surface, would sound bad, because, well, that's running through the engine, so you're taking the contaminants, running it back through the engine. But we do have filters and screens. But the big point is, when it encapsulates and hangs onto that dirt, when you drain the oil, it takes the dirt with it. As where just mineral would not, and so it would, like, say, float on the top. It doesn't get encapsulated, so that it goes through the crankshaft, it goes through the centrifuge process, creates sludge, sticks in the crankshaft, so you get a lot more sludge build up with this type of oil. In fact, they used to say, I think there's a service instruction, is who they are, that to use, let me see, I don't remember what my source is for this. Use caution when converting an engine that is operated on straight mineral oil for several hundred hours. The other oil, AD oil, will loosen sludge and potentially block oil passages. So you're supposed to change oil at every, I think this was a Lycoming service instruction, change oil every 5 hours, which I'm looking at these guys because oil is freaking expensive. How much is How much? Yeah, what is it? It's about $100 some bucks just in parts alone.
Plus, I just paid $87 and waited 5 months to get 2 oil filters.
Yeah, our oil filters are at least 35 to 40 bucks a piece if you can find them. I have 3 in stock in my hangar. Every time I can find one, I'm like, I'll take it. Because you never know. I've heard aircraft right now are just grounded. I've heard, people are starting to put screens back on and everything because you just can't get an oil filter. So change oil every 5 hours, then every 10 until you get a clean screen and no sludge in the screen. So no thanks. So I'll just put use caution when converting. Use caution when converting mineral to AD oil. That's what the next one, talk about AD oil. Was every 5 hours. Then every 10 hours. Oh my God, that would just kill me. All right, so that's our straight mineral. What do we use straight mineral for? Pretty much just breaking in. And then 25, 50 hours, they say once, your oil consumption stabilized, temperatures are stabilized, get rid of it, go to the next thing. So the next thing we have is, what number was that? I don't know, did I call it an A? Really should, if that's ABC, I don't know. This should be more like 1, this should be 2. I'm just doing this as I go. And this should be B. That makes more sense. B, ashless dispersant. Ashless dispersant oil, also called AD oil. Never a good thing when you have AD in something. Our example, we have Aeroshell W80 and W100. The W tells you it's ashless dispersant. So note, the W does not stand for winter. Where does that come from? Something in automotive, the like 20 W50, it's like 20 in the winter. I don't even think that's accurate.
Well, no, the 10W40, and that's why I'm a little confused here, is that I always understood that a 1040 will act as a 10 weight when cold.
Yep.
And a 40, and then equal to a 40 weight when hot.
Yes.
I don't know what those actual temperatures are.
Right.
But you're saying that just the viscosity index is in relation to that stability of,
Yes.
so,
But I think the base stock that they use has a very stable viscosity index, and then and I'll get into multi-viscosity in a little bit, how they make it change. And it's just molecular level, but as it heats up, it expands. Is what they're counting on it doing.
I would always learn that.
But I think the
various
W.
numbers are because of it acts one way when
Yep.
hot and the other way when cold.
But I was trying to think with the W. Is that
Yeah,
20W?
or 20 weight, 20W.
It's
or
wet
10W.
weight.
There's always winter blend for people who live in winter, I guess.
Okay, you see the W there is winter, but wait, but I don't know why it's a W. It just is. They picked W for that. And it makes life very confusing. So you can see an ashless dispersant, which is not straight weight. The only difference is the W. So when somebody, and aircraft owners are very specific when they would call up, hey, what kind of oil you want? W100. Nobody would ever say 100 weight. If they did, they would end up getting mineral, or you'd ask them, you want mineral? No, the other stuff. So you want W80 or W100. Yes, that's what I want. So just the W does not stand for winter. It's their designator to say it's ashless dispersant. Okay, so what does ashless mean? I know what assless means, but ashless. Okay, that's kind of a big deal and why we can't use automotive oils in our aircraft engines. Also, the lead is a huge problem. But ashless simply means that if you take all of the additives that they're going to put in this oil, because now some people would call this detergent oil. I had old timers, oh, it's detergent oil. So you can call it that. But it obviously has now additives going in it. If you take those additives and you burn them up in a laboratory environment, what's left does not create metallic ash. Right? Metallic ash inside of the engine, metallic particles can cause detonation. So can you see that we're very, very concerned about detonation in our aircraft engines? It's the thing that kills them. So we're in next class, we're going to talk so much about detonation, how to get around it, and fuel mixtures and all kinds of stuff. So ashless, if all the additives were burned in a beaker, there'd be no ash remaining. It's actually metallic ash. Non-ash compounds are usually metallic compounds. Metallic compounds in the combustion chamber cause hot spots and pre-ignition. So ashless means additives, when burned, do not leave metallic ash. Because metallic ash causes detonation. And detonation is like what? Is like blowing up your engine. And it's not something that happens slowly over time. It can happen suddenly and catastrophically within less than a minute. You'll blow a hole right through a piston. Once it starts going, it goes. So we're very, very concerned about it. You can hear it in your car. You cannot hear it in an aircraft. Your first indication of detonation is usually a catastrophic failure. That's your indicator light right there.
Oh shit.
Yeah. All right. So ashless means, dispersant means, that the oil suspends contaminants in the oil and carries them to the oil filter. So dispersant, it suspends contaminants and carries them to the oil filter. Assuming your airplane has an oil filter, maybe it has a screen, well, then it's really just going to leave the big particles with part numbers on the screen, but continue to carry this contaminants around in the oil, which is why aircraft that have screens have their oils changed twice as often as ones with filters, which we'll get to. All right, so let me see. Here we go. We've got our Aeroshell piston engine 180. That is just oil, mineral oil. Just straight minerals, what we call it, straight mineral. And you can see 65, 80, 100, and 120 weight. Or you buy it in the big 5-gallon buckets. Why would I ever want to buy a big 5-gallon bucket of oil? Because
Is it cheaper?
aircraft use a lot of oil. Mine holds 12 quarts. Yours is 8. You guys are both 8, right? We don't need to tell them how much we really put in it, but it's between us. All right. Then we have W100, which means it is ashless disbursement, AD oil. When do we use this oil? All the time after break-in. There we go. So it is not multi-viscosity. It is just a straight weight oil. So if I put in 100, it should be 100 when it's cold, 100 when it's hot. 100, 100, 100. Then we have our multi-viscosity oils. Multi-viscosity. We have up here in the upper right the stuff that I was talking about, the Phillips XC 2050. with stuff that ECI said, just use this, break it in, continue to use it. There you go, XC2050. I've been a big proponent of XC2050 when I bought into my little 150. There, I think he was running either 100 or 80. First thing I did, swap it over to XC2050. One of my theories being, if it's good enough to break in, if we had a cylinder issue, I don't have to switch back to mineral, because you have to think about that. Well, what do you do then if you have an engine where one cylinder comes off? Now, am I supposed to change all my oil and go back to mineral for that one cylinder and not lubricate the others? Or do I risk it and go with the W100 and not break in, or just use the XC2050? Or then you could say, well, wait a minute, if the W100 isn't very good for breaking in, and the XC is, then maybe XC is not a very good oil, and maybe shouldn't be using it at all. I don't have the answer to that. XC, notice that this has no picture, and this has a picture of a radial engine. So, and it says radial engines too. Engineered for radial engines, XC, the 2560. So, this being, notice it's SAE 2050. So that would be 50 is equivalent to 100. I don't know if it's 80-50. No, it'd be it'd be 40. If it's 40-100, I really think it's 20-100. I do, but I don't know for a fact because I got the W there. And then the favorite over here is Aeroshell W15 W50. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that is the XC is a mineral, strictly mineral, and the 15W50 is a semi-synthetic.
Have you heard of the Philips Victory or XC?
Yeah, the Victory, I don't think I have it in here. I don't know. Oh, yeah, I do. It has the anti-scuff additive in it, which I'll get to. So maybe the next slide. No, I had the Mobil 1. So told you about Mobil 1, synthetic. It didn't work. It burned up top ends really fast. And I believe what they're saying, not so much, I keep hearing that once we go to unleaded, they're going to go back to this, possibly. But yet the problem that they're saying, if I remember correctly, that we had with this was burning up top ends, not because of the lead, because the oil was so damn slippery, it wouldn't stick to our big old bores. It was just sliding right off, and we were starting up engines dry basically at the top end because the oil slid off because it was so slippery. Didn't want to stick. So there we go. There's your Victory. That's what you just asked me. We'll talk about this in a little bit. I just call it the LW additive. LW16702. It's not 702, I think. It's something else. But anyway, that's a big deal. We'll talk about that big deal in a little bit. Something to look forward to. Kind of a teaser. All right, ashless dispersant. All right, we got that. We got the ashless. We got the dispersant. If I call you up and I say, I'm not sure what oil to be using in my aircraft right now. So far, with what you know, what are you going to tell me to use?
Read the owner's manual.
Whatever has the biggest markup on it.
Yeah. What can I charge you?
Yeah.
How much you want to spend?
Ashless disbursement. Or disbursement.
Okay, he's going to go AD oil. Anybody want to counter that?
Well, depending
I
on
would further inquire, are you breaking in an engine?
Should further inquire. No, I happen to have 200 hours on my engine.
We're getting ashless dispersion.
Well, which kind?
And what engine do you have?
I have a 470.
What is the environment you're flying in like?
Thank you for asking. I'm changing it this week. And I live here in Sacramento.
Then 80 or 100?
80 or 100. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. It's not that cold around here, so.
Something with Camguard or
You're going all exotic on me. They only had 2 choices here. So choice 1 was actually 4 choices. They had 4 choices. 80, 100, or W80 and W100. Those are the only choices. And the correct thing was, are you breaking it in? What's your environment? So. Now the hard part is if you live here. It's like, well, it's not really cold enough that you have to use 80. And then maybe the next question is, when do you plan on changing it next? Because some people don't fly very often. They don't follow recommended oil change intervals. So it's like, well, guy told me to use 80 and the thing just, man, oil pressure's too low. It's 110 out. Well, yeah, it's like I didn't know you were going to leave it in there all summer, so plan ahead. All right, multi-viscosity. Put another
When
washer.
you were flying like to Boston and stuff like that, or?
I had Phillips multi-vis. Multi-viscosity. All right. Yeah, because that page didn't make any sense. If I switch to that one, this one makes more sense. Examples. Examples. We got Aeroshell, W15, W50. And that is semi-synthetic. Let me see. Okay, here's what the two W's stand for. So I was wrong. The first W, glad I wrote it down. First W, not that it matters. One W stands for, is for AD. And we'll say the second or other W is for weight of the oil at 0 degrees F. I wrote, some people say this W stands for winter. So one W stands for the fact that it's 80 oil. The other one is so that's 15 weight. I'll say that 15 weight. So it'll be 15 weight at 0 degrees F. There, that's what it stands for. So we had Aeroshell and Phillips. XC is non-synthetic. We'll make that I. We'll make this I. There we go. All right, so multi-viscosity oils, they use additives. So they use additives that allow oil to act like two different oils. And I read this analogy and I thought, that is a great analogy. Additives act like spaghetti. So you got spaghetti, you pull it out of the box and it's very small. It's stiff too, but that doesn't come into the equation. And then you put it in water, and what does it do when you boil it? Swells up. That was their thing. So, I don't know. When cold, it's kind of small and shrunk. And then when it heats up, it expands and grows. I can't really think of an analogy that, other than spaghetti, that would act like that.
I was like, is he gonna say that noodles is like so?
Yeah, I didn't make it up. I just read it. So.
Additives are like the ingredients.
The additives do tend to have a wear property, so viscosity is not linear. I'm not sure what they mean by not linear, but I add into the additives wear part, which tells me that it's not always going to act like it should. So obviously, during cold starts, We'll say that cold starts, or any start really. Oil acts like lower number. So we'd have low oil viscosity. So low viscosity would mean quicker lubrication of the engine, which would result in less wear. Because thick oil doesn't flow. And if it doesn't flow, it doesn't get into very tight cavities. Now, initially you might be thinking, well, the oil galleries in our engine, they're 1/8-inch pipe plugs. That's about 1/4 inch, right? So it's not that. But then think about it. It's got to go in and squish between the bearing and the crankshaft, flow from there to a tube, a transfer tube that shoots it out towards the connecting rod bearing. It's got to squish and go through there, then splash, go into a little trough where it's got to drip down and go to the top. You got really thick oil that doesn't want to flow. It's not going to do that. If you can't push it into the bearings, you're basically just running dry. So even though there's oil, if it's too thick, it's like running your engine dry. Well, that's not very good. And obviously during normal operation, oil acts like higher number. Well, that's good because as the engine heats up and everything expands, your oil pressure is going to tend to want to drop then if your oil was too low in viscosity. And then if it didn't fill the space between the crankshaft and the bearings, well, then you're not going to get a good film in there. So you need that. So you need thicker oil for protection. Now here's a brain thing for you. I'm having a little problem with my engine that I'm not happy about. And so when I bought it, the guy was actually running mineral oil for the first 100 hours. Why would you do that? Well, that's what the mechanic told me to use. All right, so I flew it home and I switched right over. He was actually using the Phillips mineral-based stuff, so I just switched over to the Phillips XC right away. And I was using the old Cessna gauges. So the gauges are 50 years old, and they don't read out real nice. Neither does the oil. So I have oil pressure, temperature, all these old gauges. And, it just says oil temp and then a red line. Well, it's never over at the red line. It was fine, but it's kind of high. And the pressure was kind of in the lower green. I didn't really trust it. So I, eventually I bought the JPI electronic engine monitor. So it's got brand new electronic sensor for pressure and temperature. So I believe that they're very accurate. And surprisingly, they kind of match what I was seeing before on my airplane. So I'm noted, except the oil temp. Oil temp is way lower than it was showing before. And it's critical that your oil temp, and I'll write this later on here, I believe, oil temp should reach 180 degrees. You want your oil temp to reach 180 or higher, not too much higher, but if you don't get 180 out of it, you're not boiling off the water that's in the oil. You're just creating and collecting more moisture. So I want it to be 180. It's not. Last time I flew it, I only got 140 out of it, 160 maybe. I'm like, damn. And I taped up part of my oil cooler trying to get it up. So I noticed that. The other thing I see is that my oil pressure is not as high as I want it to be. Now, it's always in the green, but on a very hot day, it kind of drops down near the bottom of the green. I don't like that. Still, green is green. Everybody says, green is green, don't worry about it. But I like to have something in there. So now you think, well, wait a minute, it's got a pressure, oil pressure adjustment, right? So like your engine, you guys have the oil pressure relief valve. And if you need more pressure out of the engine, what do? Add washers. Okay, mine is just a screw, and I can screw it in, screw it back out. It's very simple to do. But the thing you have to realize is that to a certain extent, you can't continue to adjust it. So in other words, we'll take your engine, or any engine, you start it up and it's really cold. Well, it's really cold and all the parts are tight And if I adjust my pressure regulator to give me, let's say, 80 psi, it's adjusted for 80 psi. So you start flying, you watch it come down, 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 down. If it gets too low, well, what good is adjusting the pressure regulator in, because you know that it's set for 80? You follow what I'm saying? You can turn it in all you want. It's not going to do anything. It's just now when you start it, instead of being at 80, it's 110. And then it slowly will work its way down to where it is, because the pressure relief valve closes. And do you follow what I'm saying? So my thought is it possible that if I have a multi-viscosity oil that's not getting up to temperature, is it stuck acting like the lower end of that? So in other words, if it's a
That would make sense.
2050, and I know that oil is supposed to be at least 180, because when it goes to the engine, it picks up another 40 degrees, so we hit boiling. But if it's not, it's 40 degrees too low, 20 degrees too low, then it's going to kind of maybe act more like a 40 weight oil, and it drops the pressure a little bit. Am I off on that? I'm seriously thinking about that. I'm like, I don't know if that's a thing or not a thing. Or
Try going to Bakersfield in July.
Oh,
When it's really hot.
I do,
Yeah,
and that's
not at 10,000 feet.
I go to Bakersfield often in the middle of July for my daughter-in-law. She always has a thing with the Miss California pageant, so she's the MC. So that's like a fun thing for us to do. She flies into Sacramento, and then I fly her there. So, but same results more or less. Actually,
What do you use? What kind of oil?
the Phillips. Now that I think about it, I tend to have fewer oil pressure problems then. Because it does get hotter, and it does seem to, I'm not watching it as much, but I also fly up to, 10,000 feet where it starts to cool down a little bit.
Is your oil cooler failing?
It'd be the other way. My oil's too cold.
Yeah.
The bypass
You're-
valve
The by-
is not closed enough or open enough to.
Well, wait a minute. Weren't you? Oh, no. You're not in his group. All right, wait. You got the same group?
The three of us are together.
Yeah, we're all
Well, what did you do a few weeks ago? I brought in my oil temperature control valve, and you verified it across. Don't you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, we
put
heated
in
it up.
water.
Yeah, so oil temperature, and we're going to get more into oil temperature control valves. So, you guys okay back there?
Yeah.
Or is this too much over here?
I was just making a comment.
Well, let's hear it.
Getting
Oh, I
jealous.
said we're on a time crunch. Gotta talk fast.
Oh, yeah. I cut out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So now we actually are learning. I think. Maybe you're not.
We're good, we're good, we're good.
Is it possible to retrofit the plane with one of those dual pressure regulators that?
Well, in theory, my pressure regulator is already closed.
Yeah.
It's closed all the way. So anyway, the temperature control valve, which we need to talk about, is also called a vernotherm. That's more of a Lycoming word. I just use it for all of them. It is a valve that goes in the engine, and as it heats up, it swells. When it gets cold, it shrinks. Sound familiar? So when it shrinks, it opens up two passages. One, the oil pressure comes out of the gallery, and it sees that it can go to the oil cooler, but doesn't have to. It goes to the rest of the engine. Some of it will leak through the oil cooler, but it's kind of the hard way to go, so not so much. As the oil heats up, it causes this thing to expand, and it plugs a hole that allows it to bypass the oil cooler. Now it makes it go through the oil cooler. So now the oil cooler cools the oil, and that's how that works. So, yes,
The what was it called again? Vernotherm, are those in
oil temperature control valve.
oil temperature control valve? Are those in all aircraft engines?
No.
Okay.
Number one, they're only going to be in an aircraft engine with an oil cooler. And if it has an oil cooler, it should. But I know some engines don't have one.
With oil cooler and some don't have them.
Yeah.
Still.
All right. Well, thanks, David. Now you made me very self-conscious about what I'm talking about.
Why did you do that?
But just so you know, most of the test is about troubleshooting oil and making selections. So, and vernotherms.
Yes.
So the entire test was centered around the last, like, few minutes.
I'm looking up what that is.
Vernitherm?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's the best way to learn it here. When I say a word, you Google it. So I'll circle back around to it. Let's see. Full synthetic. All right. And because we're talking about all different kinds of oils, what was that? C. And did I talk about? Yes, our multi-viscosity. We have more to talk about there. D, the full synthetic. Was tried but failed. Aeroshell found increased cylinder wear and Mobil was sued. That's interesting. Aeroshell found increased cylinder wear and Mobil was sued. Full synthetic oil such as Mobil AV1 no longer available as a multi-synthetic oil with an AD additive packaged similar to other AD oils. Synthetic oil has better lubricity or slipperiness than petroleum-based oil, as well as several other advantages. Unlike petroleum products, full synthetic oil does not
Wait, what?
coke under high heat, nor does it lose its viscosity with prolonged use. On the other hand, synthetic oil strips off parts readily because of its low viscosity at room temperature and its extreme slipperiness. It is also poor at cleansing because its molecules are too slippery to hold scavenged lead, carbon, and other particulates in suspension very well. So there we go. It does not suspend the lead particles, so we have the problem. It is this poor cleansing action, particularly with regard to lead, that was responsible for Mobil AV1 being withdrawn from the market. So, full synthetic. Oh, this is a good place to stop. So what did we say? Bad.
No longer available
Plain
for
bad.
purchase.
No plan.
Oh, that strips off. We'll put that strips off parts. Readily. I don't know. Take that with a grain of salt. Why does every single car I manufacture out there want you to use this now? Maybe because they want you to buy new cars. No, I don't think that's true. Let me see. Does not work well with. Which does not. Let me see. Hold parts in suspension. Hold contaminants in suspension well. And what else? Poor cleansing action.
So was it safe for those airplanes that went full synthetic to go back to AV oil?
I think they had to rebuild them.
Okay.
But if you didn't have it, like, if you used it once or twice, and yeah, I think it was safe to go right back to it.
Depends upon like how much wear it did because it was falling off the parts or whatever, how much,
Yeah,
many hours.
how bad it was. But yeah, I just love that statement that I wrote. Aeroshell found that Mobil was bad.
Is the poor cleansing action just another way of saying it didn't take the lead out?
Yep. So that's that phrase. Get the lead out. That phrase comes from. Doesn't. All right, that was a good place to stop because now we can talk about full synthetic. Man, I think I just covered 3 days worth of stuff.
Let's
That worked out real well. I'm just going to do that from now on.